Hey everyone, Christina Simmons with Say Yes to Holiness, and I am back with another podcast episode at the beginning of 2026. Pretty amazing that we have begun a new calendar year. Of course, for us Catholics, we already began our new year back in Advent. But for most of the world, and even most of us Catholics, we don't pay a lot of attention, do we, to the reality that our new year has already begun. But regardless, we'll set that aside. I wanted to jump on and have a little bit of a conversation about this new year, having the right priority for this year. You notice I only said priority and not priorities, no plural. In fact, I'm actually doing the Daniel challenge on Hallow right now, and actually Jeff Cavins and Chris Pratt actually focused on that same thing about how we can only have one priority. And I think I wanted to address the reality of our world telling us that we're supposed to have a whole bunch of priorities and us coming to terms with the fact of what should be our priority, loving God and doing our best to be able to share that love with other people. And that might seem like two priorities, doesn't it? But we'll get into that in a moment. So, I'm going to share some food for the head, heart, hands, and feet for all those of you out there who might be watching on Facebook or on YouTube. Thank you so much for jumping on. Please be sure to comment. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do comments back in real time, but I would like to be able to interact with you. That's one of the things that I would like to get better at moving forward, and also kind of give you guys a little bit of an update of things that I am doing. And that'll be coming out. I'm going to probably put out a blog post and post it on the sayyes2holiness.com website, substack.com, sorry, so that you guys are able to follow that and kind of know what I'm up to right now. So, our food for the head comes from St. John Berkman. He says, our true worth does not consist in what human beings think of us. What we really are consists in what God knows us to be. Over the holidays, had some conversations with different people, and probably one of the biggest things that continues to come up, and I know because I have struggled with this from time to time myself, is the reality of who are we? And in my book, Say Yes, little shameless plug there, Say Yes, Discovering Purpose, Peace, and Abundance in Daily Life. If you aren't aware of it, go and pick up a copy. You can find it at Amazon, or you can shoot me an email if you'd prefer for me to send you an autographed copy. But the fact is that in my book, I talk about whose are we? Whose, WHOSE, and we are God's. Each and every one of us is God's first. He created us. He continues to make sure that we still breathe, that we exist today. Without Him thinking of us, we would cease to exist. And that's hard for us, especially us Americans who are so self reliant and able to do things for ourselves. But the fact is that we are not our own, and we get caught up, and as St. John tells us, about thinking about what everybody else thinks about us rather than being concerned about what does God know us to be. He knows us to be his sons and daughters. He knows us to be precious in his sight. He knows us to be capable of such greatness if we allow him into our lives and allow him to transform us and shape us into the person that he created us to be to begin with. But we tend to get caught up in those perceptions, don't we? People will speak things to us, or they won't, or somebody will say something or do something, and then we doubt that we have any value, particularly if we're not able to do things. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that all of us have, is that when our lives are such that we cannot do, then in our American society, in society in particular, we feel like we have no value. And that is the least thing that's actually true. So far from the truth, I'm almost tempted to just say it's a downright lie, period. What we do, how we respond to God's love for us, is important. And St. James tells us that in his letter. We are to be doers of the word, not just those who speak the word. So, what we do is important, but it needs to be in alignment with our priority. Again, we get back to that priority, not priorities. God knows us to be his beloved sons and daughters. We need to know this truth and live this truth. If we don't know this, if we think that our true worth is based on anything other than what God knows us to be, then we're going to have a hard time. Just that simple. We're going to have a hard time. So, as we begin this new year, my invitation to you is to ponder that truth. And it is truth. There are big absolute truths. There are. One of the biggest is the fact that we are God's beloved sons and daughters. I know that's hard with all of what goes on in the world, of how people are terrible to other people, etc., but that's not God. Now, you might be asking the question very simply of, well, if God really is a loving God, why does he allow these things to happen? Well, it goes back to free will. We have a choice. You cannot love someone if you're forced to. And God knew that. And this is why he gave us free will. He gives us the choice to be able to say yes. That's a part of why Say Yes to Holiness even exists, is to remind us, me most importantly, of the fact that we have to say yes to God's invitation to love him every day. We have to say yes to it. But start this new year pondering, reflecting upon whose are you? Do you believe this? And if you do believe it, then how should it be shaping your life? Our food for the heart comes from Cardinal Robert Serra. It comes from his book, The Power of Silence, which I can highly recommend. But he writes this: keeping quiet by mastering one's lips and tongue is a difficult, blazing, and arid work. But we must delve ever deeper into the interior realities that can shape the world usefully. Man must stand silently before God and tell him, God, since you gave me knowledge and the desire for perfection, lead me continually toward the absolute of love. Make me love more and more, because you are the wise artisan who leaves no work unfinished. As long as the clay of the creature does not oppose you with obstacles and refusals, I surrender wordlessly to you, O Lord. I want to be docile and malleable like clay in your hands, for you are a skillful, benevolent potter. So the question might be, kind of building upon our food for the head, how do we delve into those interior realities that is our soul, that is our truest self, our best self? It's where the Holy Spirit resides, in our interior reality, the soul. So often our world just totally negates this reality. We focus upon the mind. What do you know? We focus upon our hands. What do we do? We focus upon physically, what are your capacities, emotionally. We will talk about how do you feel, but rarely do we speak about the interior reality of our life, which is contained in our soul. When we delve into that interior reality, then this is how we truly become shaped. This is how we are formed. And this is what Cardinal Sarah is talking about, is that if we allow God, who gave us that knowledge and the desire for perfection, to lead us more and more into love, if we allow him to give us the graces we need to be able to love more and more, then we will become that beautiful finished product that the master potter is able to create. But we have to stand silently before God and ask him to guide us. This is the act of humility, to recognize that I don't know and I can't be sure, but God can. God is able to guide us towards perfection if we trust. And in a world where trust and cynicism are running rampant, probably the most difficult thing for us to do nowadays, isn't it? To trust that God is a good God, to trust that God only wants what's good for us. One of the biggest things when we kind of come back from the holidays is we return back to those schedules, which are go, 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 that normal daily life of school, if you have kids, of all these different things that we are about. And we forget that our first priority is to spend time with the Lord, to be quiet with Him. All those responsibilities and activities, they come back full force, don't they? And so we feel like we're running, 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 and then eventually we just become hamsters on a wheel, and it's never ending. But for us to stand quietly before the Lord, we need to know that our priority is to grow in this love. We need to be about that. I was listening to a podcast. Some of you might be familiar with it, Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett. And he had a gentleman who also you guys might know, Chris Williamson. And he was on and he said this: the answers you seek are in the silence you are avoiding. If you are wrestling right now with any kind of decision, if you're wrestling with questions, they could be about just about anything, you're going to find those answers in silence, standing before the Lord. When we avoid silence because we're so busy, then what happens is that it prevents us from being able to think deeply and ponder and also be alone with ourselves and with God. We need to never despair. It might seem like there's nothing in the silence, but we have to be quiet enough to be able to discern, to begin to hear that quiet, still voice that is the Lord. We don't have to despair. God is always whispering. We just have to keep showing up, and eventually we will get on the right frequency and we'll be able to hear Him. And as Cardinal Sarah tells us, God is a skillful and benevolent potter. He is the master artisan who doesn't leave any work unfinished. So if we're willing to show up and to be in the silence, then the Lord is going to show up as well. And He's going to help us be able to determine where it is that we need to go, who it is that we need to continue to become. And we're able to trust Him that He will not leave the work unfinished. Our food for the hands comes from St. Francis de Sales in his book Introduction to the Devout Life. And if you have not read it, put that on your list of resolutions for this year to read it at some point. Perhaps that might be my next Say Yes to Holiness special online audio retreat. But from St. Francis de Sales, he writes, always be impartial and just in your deeds. Put yourself into your neighbor's place and him in yours, and then you will judge fairly. Frequently, therefore, examine your heart, whether it is so disposed towards your neighbor as you would have his disposed towards you, were you to change places, for this is the true test. We have the holiday of Martin Luther King, Jr. coming up later this month, and he spoke about justice quite a bit. There's a lot of confusion about what justice looks like. So I'm going to go a little geeky here and share paragraph 1807 from the Catechism of the Catholic Church to help us a little bit. To give their due to God and neighbor. Justice toward God is called the virtue of religion. Justice toward men disposes one to respect the rights of each and to establish in human relationships the harmony that promotes equity with regard to persons and to the common good. The just man, often mentioned in the sacred scriptures, is distinguished by habitual right thinking and the uprightness of his conduct toward his neighbor. This is exactly what St. Francis de Sales is talking about. In order for us to be more just, to live more justly with those around us, we have to know that we should be focused upon giving others what is rightfully theirs. Now, I'm not going to get into all the history and all of the, different things of, well, you owe me, etc., etc. I think St. Francis's example here of what the true test is, of where we should be so disposed towards our neighbor in bringing about reconciliation that if our places were reversed, we would be happy with the decision. That's how we need to deal with other people. We have to respect the rights of others and strive for harmony as much as we can. So, justice means we respect the freedom of others to be able to choose to do or not do something. That's their rights. And we treat everyone as they each need to be individually treated. That's the hard one, because from the outside looking in, when we're treating people as they need to individually be treated, it looks like we're treating people unfairly because we're not doing the same exact thing for one person that we are for another. But how you deal with your elderly neighbor is going to be different than how you deal with the 3-year-old next door. So we need to individually treat people as they need to be treated. So, for example, great, and I love this, it's a beautiful example of how you need to treat people individually would be, okay, you got two people and they're both invited to look over a fence, but one person is shorter. So you provide them an extra box to stand on so that they can see over the fence, while other people are only given one box, the shorter person is given two. That is what equity is. So, how can we even try to be impartial and just in our deeds? By putting ourselves in our neighbor's place. Just as St. Francis de Sales says, if our neighbor's shorter than you, then they're going to need more help to look over the fence than you would, right? If they're shorter than you. So, an easier way to try and bring about justice is by the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This means that you should be disposed, you should be open to and to do what is right and just for your neighbor, because you're hoping that they will do what is right and just to you. It's not about getting what's yours ahead of time because they're not going to give you your due, that they're not going to be just. Rather, we need to do what we want them to do unto us. We have to be the change that we see. So, can modify that. And I think Gandhi, Mother Teresa modified it, but it was you need to be the change that you wish to see. And I was just saying you need to be the change that you wish to seek. So if we want to see change, then we need to be that change. If we are seeking change, then we need to, again, be that change. We need to encourage others. We need to have no problem switching places with somebody else. If you don't have a problem changing places with somebody else in a situation, then there's a good chance that you're probably living impartially and justly. But we have to learn to do this in our daily interactions. So, in order to do that, you have to know what justice is, and you need to have that as your guide. You need to be striving to love and to do unto others as they would have you do unto them. And as Jesus said, to go one more step, to go another mile, to do even more, knowing that there's a good chance that it's not going to be reciprocated. But that doesn't mean you don't do it. So as we begin this new year, my challenge to you, my encouragement to you is look at your life, examine your life, and see how well are you living the virtue of justice right now? Are you doing things that if your place was to be changed with the person that's involved in that situation, you would not be happy with what it is that you're doing? I encourage you to make an adjustment. But I encourage you to think about, how am I living out the virtue of justice this year? And then make any adjustments that you need in order to be more equitable. Our food for the feet comes from St. Thomas Becket. Yes, that Becket, the Becket who was martyred. But he writes, remember the sufferings of Christ, the storms that were weathered, the crown that came from those sufferings which gave new radiance to the faith. All saints give testimony to the truth that without real effort, no one ever wins the crown. In light of you might have done resolutions, you might not have, but any kind of change, whenever it is, new year or not, is going to take some hard work. It's going to take real effort. Change doesn't just happen. There has to be intentionality, and there has to be the work that goes along with it. And it doesn't change all at once. So you have to persevere in it. In the midst of the persevering, we are going to suffer. To suffer is not a bad thing. We suffer when we hold our tongue and don't have the last word in an argument with someone. We suffer when we go out and we do our gym workout and we're lifting a little bit more extra weight than we did the last time, but we know that in the end it'll be good for us. We suffer when we don't take the largest piece of cake, the piece that maybe we would want, but allow someone else to have first choice. There's all sorts of ways that we suffer. Well, the joy is that Christ, through his suffering and his weathering of storms, resulted in that crown of victory, didn't it? And also because Christ suffered and weathered those storms, he brought meaning to them. So we are always going to be able to bring about meaning through our sufferings if we unite them with God's will for us. And this brings us all the way back around to us knowing our true worth and pondering that truth and knowing that the only opinion that matters is who God knows us to be. If we start there and then we spend time in silence and allow him to provide those answers rather than rushing around and all the noise and all the different things that keep us from being able to hear his voice, if we set those things aside and we find those answers from him, which are going to help us be able to live more justly, we're able to live with greater love, we're able to create a world that, is it perfect? Absolutely not. But is going to be a little bit more perfect. And that's what we do. Virtue, when those virtues of goodness and kindness and gentleness, when those virtues are on display, that's a glimpse of heaven for other people that they wouldn't have gotten if that wasn't going on. This is why we strive to be virtuous. This is why we should work to try and be more just, is so that someone will look at us and go, wow, that was like over the top. I never would have done that. But maybe now they'll think about doing that. But all of our sufferings and storms, everything that we are going through, it's in order to help us win that crown of eternal life. For us to weather the storm with God's help. He doesn't leave us alone. And this is the most important thing for us to remember. At the beginning of the new year, God never leaves us alone. The holidays might have been a really difficult time for you. You were not alone. God was with you. God is always with you. And we need to never forget that. We need to know that all of what we've gotten through already and all of what lays ahead of us, God will never desert us, regardless of what we might be going through. It's hard to remember the wisdom that St. Thomas Becket shared here, that it takes true effort to be able to win the crown. But St. Philip Neri tells us that if we remember that God does everything well, even when we might not see the reason of what he does. And that is the great challenge before us as we enter into 2026. For us to remember that God does everything well, but we just don't see it. We fail to see the reason for it. We fail to see how God sees. So my hope for you in this upcoming year is that during 2026, that we try to allow God to help us see as he sees, to enter into that silence, knowing that we're his sons and daughters, to be able to do what we can to make this world a little bit more just, a little bit more virtuous, knowing that whatever it is that we're going through, we're not alone, and that our witness will help others be able to persevere, but especially for us to remember it all will bear fruit in the end, because it is through it that we will win that crown, the crown of everlasting life. Know my continued prayers for each and every one of you, and know that my hope for 2026, me and for you, is that we are able to do whatever it takes each and every day so that together we can tell the master of death, not today. God bless everybody. Talk to you soon.